the next thing that we have to talk about at this point is I'm going to go with the Chicago Bulls here. And they are not good. Their defense has impressed me, but Woj was on ESPN, and I'm going to play the clip for everybody, actually, but talking about how Chicago could wind up being sellers at the trade deadline. So here's Woj on ESPN.
I think for the Lakers, a lot of teams in this league, they're going to be watching what happens with one of the teams we have playing tonight, the Chicago Bulls. Do the Bulls pivot at some point this season? Do some of their players become available? That's not the case now, but I think for the Lakers between now and February 9th, are there some high-end talent that is not available now that becomes available closer to the deadline?
Are we speaking of a certain guy who just was paid $215 million and is from Southern California? Might his name come up?
Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic. I think those are all players, people in the league. Teams are waiting to see, will any of them be available by the trade deadline? Right now, this is a Chicago team that wants to make the playoffs, wants to get a healthy Lonzo Ball back. They're not ready to concede yet.
So the Bulls are not going to blow it up. And I get why people think that they might. And I want to make it clear, I don't think trading Vucevic would constitute blowing it up for them. I just don't know, long term, especially how valuable he is. The Bulls, they've underachieved this year. Their offense has been on a lot of nights dog shit. I don't understand why you're trying to build a team around Vooch, LaVine, and DeRozan with very few athletic defenders and then guys who don't get up 3-point volume. The Bulls are in the bottom 5 of 3-point frequency, and I believe 3-point percentage as well. I haven't checked the stats after their game with the Warriors. That's an issue. A lot of it is Lonzo Ball is out, and he's valuable to them at both ends for his 3-point volume and for just the defensive disruption. I think this team, they've surprised me with the number of turnovers they've still been able to force. They are in the top 10 of points allowed per possession. So they've overachieved there, and some of their lineups really working. But the offense has been more of a slog than it should be. How much of that is just LaVine not really in form yet? He's shooting like sub 32% from mid-range. Not his 3-point shooting is dipped, but like he's still shooting a pretty high clip on his non-corner threes, which I think is a big deal. So there feels like there's something off. Patrick Williams is sort of not being high volume enough on offense, even when he has those good nights. Like, is there value in going 2 of 4, 3 of 4 from 3? I'm not talking about his 0 of 8 performance from the field against Phoenix, of course. But it's so low volume. So you look at this team and it feels like they have so many that they're searching for so many things. You see them change their starting lineup against the Warriors, where they're inserting Javonte Green and Caruso coming back, and so. There's so many questions. And I think a lot of people believe that, maybe they would blow it up. We've seen the DeMar DeRozan to the Lakers scenario prop up. Bill Simmons had talked about it. I didn't listen to the pod, but I saw it get aggregated or at least thrown on Twitter. Zach Lowe mentioned it on his pod that the Lakers they have not made an offer, but that there hasn't been a discussion in Lakerland about, would we go after Vooch and DeRozan? I don't know if that constitutes blowing it up. DeRozan's really good. I don't know if Vooch's value to this team moving forward is complicated. I think he's probably been better offensively overall than he was for much of last year. And okay, good. There's value in that. And ideally, when you're going to build your offense around DeMar DeRozan, yes, he's shooting 34% from 3. Good enough on that type of volume, 4.5 attempts per game. And he's shooting almost 55% on his twos. I still believe even when Vooch isn't good, he's just a very effective connective passer. But look, the Bulls, they're not going to blow it up. They have that pick they owe to the Magic with top 4 protection. And so if you make a move to bottom out this season, and I think if you trade DeRozan, kind of knowing that Lonzo Ball might not play this year with that knee injury, that would, you'd come pretty close to that. That would almost be worse. If you're going to bottom all the way out, because if you have, let's say if you finish with one of the 3 worst records, and we'll get into that in a second, you have 52.1% chance of getting a top 4 pick. So yes, it's more than a coin toss, but it's basically a coin toss. And so if you finish, you're 5th in the order, you could send this prime time pick to Orlando that you didn't need to. So there's no value in bottoming out this season. You could try it. If you're getting a caps lock draft pick haul for LaVine or DeRozan and you really want to start over, you could try it. You could, because you look at this as a sunk cost. And then you just move forward with the picks and maybe prospects that you've accumulated. And who knows, if you finish with one of the top lottery odds, maybe you're able to keep that pick. It's just, look, there's plenty of season left to play, but you look at the Bulls and they're too close to the middle to do that effective tank, if you want to call it. There's 6 losses, in front of the Orlando Magic. And it's 5 losses in front of the Orlando Magic. Okay, fine, but like you have to tank your ass on it. Like the Hornets, what's going on with LaMelo Ball? And they're just bad. The Thunder are behind you, and is there a point where they're gonna not play Shea as much if they lose enough? They've been frisky. I will say that. Like the Thunder have been good, especially when Shea's on the floor. Does that hold all season? The Rockets, yeah, they beat the Suns on the road. Like that's cool and fun, but they're bad. The Spurs, they're awful. They've definitely been the worst team in the league since they started the season, like gangbusters. The Pistons, Cade's injured. We don't know when he's coming back. They're going to be terrible. They did beat the Mavericks, though, but that's sort of an indictment on the Mavericks, although Killian Hayes might be a superstar. And then the Magic are just like, they've dealt with a slew of injuries in the backcourt, to Paolo Banchero as well. So they might, like, they're fun and there's a base there, but we're talking about, like, you have to, let's assume the Lakers leapfrog the Bulls right now. Okay, fine, whatever. The Thunder, the Hornets, the Rockets, the Spurs, the Pistons, the Magic. Those are 6 teams that you're in front of right now. And you have to bottom out 4 of them to have one of like the top lottery odds in the equation. So, and then like, yes, it's likely that you wouldn't be sending, it's mostly likely that you wouldn't be sending Orlando like number 5 or number 6 if you're finishing with the one of like a bottom 2 record or a bottom 3 record instead of the absolute worst record. If you finish with the absolute worst record, like you can only send them, you'll be in the top 4 or you'll get number 5. Like you can't fall lower than 5, but that would almost be more of a disaster. Like you send them the 7th pick because let's say you had the 3rd worst record. It's all right. Like, but if you send them the 5th pick, I don't think you can justify bottoming out in that vein. And everything we've seen from their front office is geared towards the exact opposite. Is like they've tried to tread water either in the middle or just they read too much into. I mean, when they went after DeRozan in the first place, it's not a matter of they didn't necessarily double down on last season. They didn't make any huge moves, but they were better than expected for part of last season. But the angle was getting a lot better than people thought they should have. Quicker than they should have. They go and they trade for Vooch, and then you bring in Lonzo Ball, and you bring in DeMar DeRozan, you bring in Alex Caruso. Caruso signing I thought was a great signing. Lonzo Ball turned out to be a good signing for his health issues. DeRozan's making his money. So they haven't made any franchise malpractice moves. Maybe the trade for Vooch when you're looking at the opportunity cost here, especially with what Wendell Carter Jr. has turned into. So I get it. I get the criticism, and I get the inclination to, if someone comes along and is going to blow you away with an offer, who's blowing you away for an offer DeMar DeRozan? Like, yes, he is really good. Would you do that for the Lakers' 2 unprotected first-round picks? Again, I guess you consider it because DeRozan is in his age 33 season, but like you do risk then you're going to send this high pick to Orlando. And I think that this is going to be a franchise, at least until the offseason, they're going to try, and it might even be for the next couple seasons, because when you look at their pick commitment to Orlando, like it's not just, okay, after this season, it's over, we're done with, it's cool. You owe a top 4 protected pick this year, and then it becomes top 3 protected. So like you have 2 years now where that's a very loosely protected pick. Tanking doesn't guarantee that you keep it. That's too precarious of a situation to be in, because, okay, you keep your pick this year, fine. If you're bad enough, but then are you going to be good enough to ensure that you maybe don't send another primetime pick in 2024? No. And so it just doesn't feel like the right timing of a rebuild when you're looking at the aim of this organization and also the pick constraints that they're now up against. And like, look, hey, this kind of matters too. Your 2025 pick is owed top 10 protected to the Spurs. But 2 years after, so that could be 2026, depending on what happens with the Orlando pick. It's just they're not set up to tank, which is bad. You could, again, if you're getting enough picks, Zach LaVine is going to be the guy that gets you the most picks. Our team's willing to roll the dice on him, where he's got 4 years left on his contract, which is an asset. He's nowhere near considered old. Like, this is someone who is still in the heart of his prime, or since this is age 27 season, is he just entering his prime? But all the knee stuff in the rear view, that has to be concerning. And so unless you're getting bowled over with the Rudy Gobert type or Donovan Mitchell type return, you're not going to blow it up. And so it's way more likely that the Bulls, just knowing how loosely protected their first rounder is the next 2 seasons, you want to convey it now. Like, it gets easier to, if you convey it this season, then it's over. It's done with. And then you can start worrying about, is maybe the time to bottom out, because you can ensure that you don't send a top 10 protected pick to San Antonio. And so this is more of a question for the Bulls over the offseason. Doing it now, look, if the Lakers came calling for 2 firsts and you think that you could tread water enough without DeMar DeRozan to just pick up the Lakers late first round picks, so you have those in your chamber, I think you could go that route. But we're not going to see, even if you're including both Vooch and DeRozan, do you think that the Bulls aren't going to be appreciably worse? Maybe they're still not. If you're going to play Zach LaVine, if Lonzo comes back, if Caruso stays healthy, if Ayo Dosunmu, this gives Patrick Williams some extra reps. Like maybe I would still say you're too good with Zach LaVine to be one of like the worst teams, but you're still in a position to where you might be sending Orlando a better pick than you would want. Again, that shouldn't be the entire factor, but you have to at least safeguard yourself against the bottoming out part. And so Zach LaVine specifically, to me, would be off the table once he's trade eligible. I don't see the value in doing it now unless you are getting that return. But regardless of what they do, even if they're sellers, it's going to be more half-assed to me than not. If they went that route, which again, I don't expect them to, it's not going to be this full-scale teardown because they just can't afford to do it. And the public relations nightmare would look if you're sending a very high lottery pick to Orlando. Now, you could wind up doing that anyway. I think that's the other argument here is like, as of right now, that you are not even in the Eastern Conference play-in tournament. Like, yeah, you're hovering around that territory, but you're behind the Knicks. You're in 12th. So that can be a factor. Oh, we're still going to send them a lottery pick anyway. But I do think the optics are going to matter to this franchise, and they should. What they shouldn't do, I would say, is double down and like, oh, can we have technically that Portland pick this year if it, if it conveys. We have Patrick Williams. Is there a team that's interested in Kobe White? Like, we have Alex Caruso. Does the team want to buy in on Lonzo Ball while he's injured? I don't want to see them. I don't think this is a team that should double down now and try and get noticeably better. If an opportunity arises where the cost of entry for a player who really helps your team, like, is it someone who's really going to sling up your 3-point volume or just give you more of an athletic defender on that type of a scale? Yeah, absolutely do it. And again, there's a team that's really in love with Vucevic. I don't think losing him would be this blow. I think you'd probably still be good enough to hover around play-in territory. Absolutely. But I don't think that you can make any wholesale buy or sell moves here. And by that, I mean, you're certainly, the DeRozan is like the middle ground. I would still lean against the team entertaining it, but if the Lakers came calling with 2 picks, you have to. I'm talking about it's the Zach LaVine demarcation line, getting rid of him. It's not happening. And he's not young enough to be part of a rebuild, but he's young enough to where, like, you can wait until the summer, nothing's going to happen with his value, and maybe you retinker the roster, feel better about it with him, or that's when you make this decision after you've conveyed your loosely protected pick to Orlando. So you're not going to go to that extreme, but you also can't be like, this isn't one of the teams that should be trying to sneak in and get in the John Collins sweepstakes, for interest. I'm just throwing a name out there. Or if Bradley Beal becomes available, that's a more feasible name that feels like they could become available. Or if the Heat really just keep sucking, even though they just beat the Celtics and Jimmy Butler wants that, that's a bad example because I don't think Jimmy Butler would want to go back to Chicago. So like, you just shouldn't be the team that's going to be an extreme buyer or an extreme seller. I think the Bulls are trapped here for now. I don't think you want to put yourself at risk of sending Orlando too glitzy of a first rounder this season. So I would expect them to be, and so if we're talking about like medium buyers or sellers, I would still lean that I think they'll be buyers over sellers, if not Stan Patters. But that is something to monitor. I just don't think teams waiting for Zach LaVine around the league, and maybe we're just talking about the Lakers here because that's such a delusional organization, it's not going to happen.